So, guys, I want to let you know, a little bit about Doug. I met Doug through Dave Hodges, and Dave told me you got to talk to this guy. He's on fire, And I talked to Jamie, and Jamie said, "Yeah, no, he's the real deal." And and then I talked to, and then I found out that he was a Marine. And you know how I feel about the Marine Corps. Once I found that out, I was like, I'm talking to him. He can come on the show. I don't care what he does. He's a Marine. So he was also a federal police officer. He was on a rapid response team, and I'm paraphrasing, and just an all-around incredible guy. Worked for DHS, left public service, and now he just serves Jesus. And he's got a great show with Dave Hodges. It's called the Doug and Dave Show, I believe. And he and Dave get into all this stuff. And fascinating young man. And Doug, we're just thrilled to have you on with us tonight.
Well, Mike, I'm very honored to be here amongst you and the body of Christ. Hello to everybody. Hello. Blessings from our Lord Christ. I have my own show. It's called the American Vindicta Show. It's a podcast that I started when God told me to leave DHS almost 2 years ago. So a little background on myself. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 18. By 19, I was in Iraq. I was in Iraq. I joined the Marine Corps in 2006. I was in Iraq in Fallujah in 2007 and 2008. I was in Iraq again in 2009 in a place called Ramadi. And then I got out of the Marine Corps in 2010. I started working at the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. I was on the deputy program, so that means I had to work my way up to pay for the academy. So I worked in the jail. A lot of life experiences that I learned in the jail that I actually push for a lot of men, even ladies, if you're interested. But I strongly suggest men just do 2 to 3 months part-time. Go work at your local jail. You will learn skills and learn how to talk to people and deal with people like you've never known before, and it will greatly benefit you with handling people, because with the times that are coming, the human element is the real problem that we're all going to be dealing with. So I got recruited while I was at the jail working at the sheriff's department by what is later to be known as Blackwater, but from the time I was in, it was called SOC, and I was an assistant team leader on a special response team out of Victory Baghdad complex in Iraq. Saw some action, did some pretty cool stuff. I did that for a short stint, came back home, and then got recruited by the Department of Justice. I worked in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I ended up working in 4 of our installations, anywhere from a camp, which is minimum security, to a low security, medium security, to the penitentiary. And they ended up keeping me at the penitentiary because I could handle myself. I was good with gangs. I knew a lot of working knowledge of how to use tattoos to help identify gang members, and also like to fight. So that kept me there. By the time I was at the penitentiary, I think we had lost 24 officers that year who just said we're quitting. It was very chaotic, but once again, a lot of good life experiences that I learned working in a prison. Then from there, I got recruited by the Department of Homeland Security. They moved me from East Texas up to Camden, New Jersey, which was the murder capital of the U.S. in 2012. And I had been with them for almost a little more than 10 years before I'd got out. So I ended up serving our government for about 15 years. So ever since I was 18, I have had a gun in my hands serving the government, what I would consider serving the people. And the stuff from 2020 with the riots, the elections, that's what really caught my eye. I was in Portland, Oregon during all the riots for well over a year. We had been actually deploying to Portland, our special response team. We've been deploying to Portland since 2016, dealing with those idiots up there. In my team, we were either on the border because we're located in Dallas Fort Worth, so we either worked on border operations or within the local vicinity, high risk court cases, protective details, emergency, national emergency stuff, like hurricanes, floods, you name it. And then going back and forth dealing with the domestic terrorism from Portland, Oregon. So before I left, I was a team leader during all the operations in Portland. And before I left, I ended up becoming the tactical commander for the operation there. So I had a lot of experience dealing with criminality, dealing with that from a federal level. I wasn't a local cop. I wasn't a state cop. I was a federal cop. It's a completely different type of jurisdiction and job, but law enforcement ends up becoming the same at the end of the day. And so I got to see the good and best of America, and I got to see the worst and worsening parts of America. I was there for the George Floyd riots. I was there for the riots in Baltimore. I was there for the Boston bombing trials. I was at Hurricane Sandy. Let me see, we were in Kansas City when all the rioting there started. So I've been to a lot of these NSC level events, national security level events, and I have, quite a bit of experience with talking with politicians whom I loathe. I do not like politicians. And I always felt that I was doing my best to serve the people. And Mike, when I saw that the government did not have the same mindset as me, especially after 2020, when Joe Biden was wrongfully placed as a president. He was not elected. He was placed into that position. And Biden came out and more or less said that, half of America are domestic terrorists. Well, I know what that means from a federal standpoint. When you, the president, label half of America as a terrorist or supporting terrorism, that gives access to a lot of things that the federal government can do. And we saw with January 6th that Facebook to Twitter to CNN, you name it, they let loose the hounds and were tracking people down with facial recognition, that honestly was disturbing at the rate that you saw a cooperation from the media to the federal government. Obviously, if you don't know this, the media is and has been owned since Operation Mockingbird back in the 60s by the federal government. There's a closed door meeting that the CIA director had with Congress back in the early 70s. And this actually had to do a lot with MK Ultra. And during those closed door meetings, it was, well established that most of the media, from newspapers to magazines to articles wrote online now, all have marching orders from us, from the government.
Well, Doug, it's interesting. You have such vast experience in this, and you and I talked a bit. The topic that I chose and you went along with was, are we really on the brink of a civil war in America? And what does that look like in today's world?
Oh, we absolutely are. Now, if none of y'all know who I am, I wanted to be a high school history teacher. That's what I was getting my degree in, was history. I actually studied in the Greek Peloponnesian Wars. So for any of you who, love phalanx warfare, I studied that as a major, I guess because I'm a nerd inside. But I know a lot about geopolitics. I know a lot about American history, world history. And you got to understand that this Civil War is going to be different from the first Civil War. So let's recount the first Civil War real quick. The first Civil War began in 1861. It was decades of simmering tensions that were between the northern and southern states. And what they discussed? They discussed stuff like slavery and taxes, states' rights, westward expansion. And then when you had a figure like Abraham Lincoln come into the picture, he stirred a lot of things up. And you caused, at that point in time, 7 different southern states to secede from the Union, and they created the Confederate States of America. And then another 4 would go on to join, to include Virginia. And General Lee, actually, Robert E. Lee, started a civil war in Virginia himself. Whenever he separated at the War College, he had half the ranking officers follow with him. So what does that show you? In a lot of ways, that shows you, for one, it can be done. It has been done. And if it was done so well before you had social media, before you had CGI, before you had deep fake, before you had the government plants, if it was done then, oh, how much easier it could be done now. So what Lee ended up doing, because he was such a charismatic leader, he was actually so beloved that they begged him not to secede. They begged him, do not go to the southern side. But he said, upon his own honor, that he has to go where his heart was leading him. He joins the South. And from there, a big fall of the high-ranking officer staff went with him. Could we see that replicate in the Pentagon today? Probably 50-50. I'll give you 50-50 because I know people in the Pentagon. Now, I'm not going to put words in anyone's mouth. This is just Doug's opinion. I think overwhelmingly 80% of the military is conservative. I think overwhelmingly 80% of the military either has an affiliation with a Christ-like mindset that America was supposed to be, that is still in touch with the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and patriotism in a righteous way. And then to go on with that, should a civil war break out, the officer corps that is most affiliated with those attributes would most likely garner the most attention and take away with them most of the general staff. So you would have a great falling away from the Pentagon and from the different battalions and divisions and air wings. The fleets are always going to be a totally different monster that, let's say the elitists, the New World Order, the invisible they will have to deal with a whole new problem with the naval fleet, to include the submarine corps. So 20% is what I give you as the diabolical schemers, the wokeism in the Pentagon. If you look at it from that direction, why is it now that they have transgenders that are, for the Air Force of all, that are having to do recruiting because they can't get anyone to sign up? Well, for one thing, it actually came out in a statistic that between the ages of 17 and 29, Americans are too grossly obese to join the military. So we're not looking very good right there off the standpoint. But they're having a hard time recruiting. And why is it? I think because besides what the media will show you, there are more people in America who agree in conservatism than disagree with conservatism. And I think wholeheartedly, there are more people who are leaning towards and just joining the side of conservatism, which I do not affiliate with the right. I do not affiliate with the left, and I do not affiliate with the right. I am not a Democrat, obviously, and I am not a Republican, because you have 2 wings of the same filthy bird at this point. And I am wholeheartedly independent and Christ-minded, which means that I will no longer shed my blood, nor should I think my brothers shed our blood for the needs of wealthier men to establish their wealth even more amongst themselves, which has been what our wars have been fought about since Vietnam and post. So America, for the most part, because of the internet and because of stuff like Hear the Watchmen and others, more of this news, more of this mindset is garnering attention, and it's sinking in with the youth of our nation. And by youth, I mean from the age 40 to 18, where it matters, 40 to 18. So that's my generation. I'm 36. The problem is going to be, should we get into civil war? And by the way, I've been making this prediction since 2020. We will have one of the two happen first. We will either have a civil war happen first that's coinciding with World War III, or we will have World War III, which sparks a revolution that starts civil war in America. I think by the way we view these things right now, Joe Biden is doing everything that he was put in power to do, and that was to stir strife amongst the people, because that's the only thing he's doing. He's stirring strife. He hasn't done anything that's beneficial. He's done everything that he can to be negative in America. Look at Maui. The atrocity of Maui is just going to be another nail in the coffin for the next American Civil War. And, you know, Mike, people say, why would they do things like this in Maui? Me and Dave Hodges have been working on a lot of stuff. We're getting intelligence every day. People on the ground, people from Oahu visiting Maui. It's disturbing. But the lack of response from FEMA and from other federal agencies is even more disturbing. Hungary actually just approved and delivered housing for the people of Maui. Hungary, that's not America. So if we're doing everything we can to shoot ourselves in the foot, we certainly ain't walking out of this next fight. You're going to, pardon my French, you're going to piss off everyone in America to the point that they don't want to listen. You're going to lock us down again to the point that we don't want to listen. Try and vaccinate us. They've tried to satanize our kids. They've demonized the patriots. They've taxed from the low to the medium class so much that your dollar is about 3/4 to a half of what it used to be. In Texas, my bill last year for electricity, because in our area, our electricity we get from natural gas factories. That's the energy transformers in our area is powered by natural gas. They've been selling that. ERCOT has been selling that off, but because of Joe Biden and sending it to Ukraine. And that's why Texans have the highest electricity bill in America from last year. My electricity bill from the spring went from $300. We got 5 acres. We have a small poultry farm. We're running incubators and, you know, all that type of stuff. So we went at about, $300 a month to $500 a month to $600 a month to $700 in July. In June. July became $800 a month. August was $900. And I called Tri-County Electric, because I live in Parker County, Texas. And I said, why in the hell am I paying a $900 electric bill? And why has it grown to $100 every month? And so a supervisory representative told me exactly what was going on, that ERCOT was being forced to sell off natural gas and oil from Texas to Ukraine, and we had to pay the bill for it. We had to pay the bill for it. And I said, if I called my congressman and complained, you think anything would be done about it? The lady laughed at me. She said, I live in Parker County. I'm paying the same you are. So we had a good, 20-minute talk about how this is all bullcrap, but you're just going to have to deal with it. That was the mindset of your politicians just a couple years ago. Nothing has changed. Nothing at all has changed. We have sent so much money to Ukraine that we could have rebuilt 3/4 of America. I did the math. Almost every family in America could have been upgraded 1,000 foot extra in their house and more, and a car paid off, and probably close to $50,000 in your bank account. But instead, they gave it to Ukraine. So what I'm getting here, class, is that the animosity, the escalation of animosity in our internal politics is unforgiving at this point to the American people. So if it's unforgiving at this point to the American people, do you think Donald Trump will come in and be able to put a sweet balm upon this wound and heal it? Probably not. I will say this: the powers that be are doing everything possible to stop that man from running. Maybe it's because they're terrified of Donald Trump now. Remember, Hillary Clinton said that if this bastard wins, we're all going to be hanging from nooses. He did not take this job seriously when he was my commander-in-chief. And we said when we were in Portland, just let the chains off of us. We were nothing more than the devil dogs we were in Bellow Woods. We were rabid. We wanted Antifa so bad. We knew where they were. We knew who they were. We knew who they affiliated themselves with. We knew their bank accounts. And those bank accounts attached themselves to George Soros and offshore accounts and linked right back to the Democratic Party. But yet you people never heard anything of it. But in 2018, we had all that information. So with a track record of your government, which is, as Hillary Clinton said, is too big to fail, you're out of control government that tries to take land from people and is successful. From the organizations that it's set up throughout the government, and to include your states, like CPS, talk about an organization that can scare a family to death, CPS alone. We are in a tinderbox for civil war. And you also put into power the same guy who brags about how he got the sunset for the 1990s machine gun bill. So, you know, he's so proud. I banned assault weapons for 10 years. I'll do it again. He didn't ban anything because people still kept their guns, right? But what this guy wants now, and even worse, you have someone like Gavin Newsom, who I swear could be the Antichrist incarnate, though he's not him. But he is definitely operating within the spirit of the Antichrist. This guy wants to completely rewrite the Second Amendment so that it's for peace and safety for the people that you become disarmed. I think it's telling, Mike, that you now have a duality of circumstances in America. What do we do? Well, this is what happens. You get pushed up against a corner and you have two chances to do something, and you have two choices. You fight back, and you fight back no matter what the consequence. As long as we are fighting back in a Christian way, righteousness from God will prevail in us. Should we let our pride get in the way and we don't put God first in that fight, we will surely fail. That is exposed throughout the entire Bible. Pride is your great downfall, which is one of the biggest problems from the Second Amendment community. It's one of the biggest problems from the patriot community, is we have made an idol out of America and we have forgotten to put God first. We just go, oh, God bless America, like it's just a little salt and pepper on the steak. The other problem is if we don't fight back, then they force you to capitulate. To capitulate means to surrender, to back down, to be that whooped dog in the corner that every time its master looks at it, it wets itself. You can see this in North Korea, China. You can see it in any place where there was a dictator in charge. Lots of places in Africa right now are a reflection of that. Russia, Ukraine is a reflection of that. America is the leading reflection of totalitarianism. And it's time we start admitting it. You know, I remember when the Twin Towers got hit. I'm sure many of you do. Just to make some of you feel bad about yourselves, I was in 8th grade
Yeah.
whenever the towers fell. So I'm the youngster here, right? I was in my math class when I watched the second plane hit the tower. And I saw all the patriotism. I saw all the people gathering together. We got this great enemy. You know, it was violent Islamic extremism for 15 years. Violent Islamic extremism. And now it's domestic violent extremism. Have you noticed that they're always going to keep the two things there, violent and extremism? They can throw anyone underneath that bus at that point. I say political violent extremism is the real problem. You have organizations like mine, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, which is at least 95% veterans, to include Department of Justice with the Marshal Service and the ATF and the DEA, mostly veterans. The FBI is, there's veterans sprinkled in there, but for the most part, it's Ivy League college kids. To the average police department is veterans now. So if the veteran class, the warrior class, continues to carry on the oath to serve and protect, this is a question that we had that I posed to many people. You are going to, for law enforcement and the military, if we continue down this totalitarianism road, like let's say they do arrest Donald Trump, let's say they do infringe upon your First Amendment right, like they have been, and then they start to cut that in half. And then they start to take away your ability to have your Second Amendment. Oh, your right to speedy trial, January 6th. How many people have died in prison since January 6th, right? These people are already doing what I'm talking about. Eventually, those of us who was given the authority by the American people to serve and to protect who? Protect the wealthy elite? Protect the Republicans, the Democrats, or to protect the people? We, the people, by the way. Those guys, to include myself, this is what I pose to a lot of my young officers, is you're going to eventually have to deal with this question. You're going to have a moral, ethical decision line made in the sand for you by your government. Just like those in Nazi Germany from an organization that was called the Order Police. Now, when the SS took over, before it became the Waffen SS, Waffen SS means militarized SS. The Schutzstaffel was actually the law enforcement branch of Germany. They were your secret police. They were your FBI, DEA, ATF. They were your immigration officers. And then what they did was they compartmentalized everything into just the SS. And then from the SS, it became an investigative branch and then the order police. So you had the administration, which was Heimlich Himmler, and then you had the investigative branch and then the order police. The order police was your municipality, sheriff's department, constables. They were also your National Guard. And they were all formed into one police force. It was the order police that rounded up people and took them to the ghettos. There's a book I have somewhere in here. When we have a break, I'll get the book and let you guys see it. I recommend everyone read this book, by the way. It's called Ordinary Men. It catalogs this one unit that was sent into Poland, occupied Poland, to round up Jews and Poles And let me tell you something that kept me up for a couple nights, the way this question was posed, and it's a direct quote. They were gathered up, this lieutenant colonel gathered up his police force. They were drove, I don't know how far away, but they weren't told where they were going. But they were put in trucks, they were sent to Poland, and they were then told to start rounding people up. And if they didn't go, to shoot them, kill them. So what this lieutenant colonel did when they got to where they were going, he said, listen, guys, this is the job. This is what we have to do. We have to round these people up, and anyone who resists, we're going to kill them. So says the Fuhrer. And you know very well that if we don't kill them, they'll kill us and they'll kill our families. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line in the sand. If you do not want to proceed forward with this operation, do not cross this line with me. But I'm in charge. I'm afraid, and I'm going to do it. He crossed the line. Every man, to a fault, followed him. No one decided not to go. So this is where you get the original saying of, I was just following orders. Because I was just following orders meant I didn't want to be tortured to death, and I didn't want my family to be murdered. That is what a totalitarian, authoritarian, a dictator state will do to its people. So who are really some of the first victims? It's actually the law enforcement. Because you don't have a choice. I see this now very clearly getting out. But you're always told you're just following orders, right? Oh, man, I hear that all the time. Hey, we're just doing what we're told to do, guys. Don't be mad at us. I do not agree with those moralities anymore. Like I said, we all are going to eventually have to have this decision line in the sand, to include Americans, of what do we decide is too far, too much, and what are we willing to lose? Are we willing to capitulate to lose a few rights just so that we can keep our internet? Just so that we can go to Starbucks? Just so that we can be left alone? They won't leave you alone. They're coming for your guns. They're about to take down your dollar. In every way, the infrastructure of the Antichrist is being established in America, from the West Coast to the East Coast. You cannot run from this. You can't hide from it. I've had wealthy men hire me, work part-time for them, try to solve some of their problems. You know what they all had in common? They thought their wealth would save them. The Bible has something to say about that. Your wealth won't save you. In Isaiah, the Lord says that only I am your savior. So I think once we talk about the Civil War aspect, if you look at the breakdown of the states in 1861, overwhelmingly, the southern states felt that it was unfair that the northern states had manufacturing. Farms were much smaller. They were more or less your local farm for your local people, like a homestead. So they didn't rely upon that for monetary purposes, but instead, the South wholly relied upon that, and they partially believed that taking away the slaves would take away a mass workforce, which would then make the North put them under their thumb. There was an animosity somewhere that was brewing. Don't ever forget this. The thing that's never mentioned in history class is that Satan was in all of it. Satan was working amongst all of us. He is now, and he was then. How else was it that we lost 620,000 men out of 2.4 million that fought? 620,000 men died in this land. Anyone ever been to Gettysburg? Man, it is I was in awe. I have a very imaginative, creative imagery for when I go to places. I can almost see and replicate battles. Like I said, I'm a war historian, so I study this a lot. And just to imagine how some men would just continue to press forward and press forward and press forward, no matter how bloody the conflict. And yet, what were they pressing forward and killing each other, bayoneting each other, disemboweling each other, blowing themselves apart with artillery fire from cannon fodder? For what? For money. It was about money. That's what it was. It was about money. The God of this world, money. And what's going on right now in Ukraine is about money. What's going right now in politics in America is about money. Any one of you, I dare you, try and run for president. You need about $20 to $30 million to start. Oh, yeah. Anyone watch the debates? Vivek Ramaswamy, young guy, nice guy, right? Nice guy. Very eloquent speech. Part of the WEF Young Global Leaders Association. The fix is in. He was there to make Ron DeSantis look like a fool, and he did. Now, Ron DeSantis is probably not the best option for America. He's a Roman Catholic. So at least he says he has Christ on his mind. The problem with politicians who say they're Roman Catholic, let's go ahead and name a few of them. Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton. We can probably name a few others. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. You see a strange connection amongst these politicians, and it's a disconnection from the American people. Now, I don't like Roman Catholicism. That's my own personal view. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. Roman Catholicism follows that of Rome, that of the Vatican. And there is always this darkness around this Vatican approach here in America, especially with the Jesuits. And you see it all over the place in America. Anyone who doesn't know this, I will illuminate you to it, which is not an Illuminati saying. I get accused for being Illuminati because of my background over here on one of my logos, because I like the Roman Legion. I enjoyed their war tactics. But every Red Cross and every church that is involved in moving the illegal immigrants in America is directly connected to the Jesuits and to the Vatican. Directly connected. If you don't believe it, go look it up. If you don't like that, that's too bad. There was an American historian, Chris Pinto. He's also a movie producer, good friend of mine. We did a interview where we actually went and talked about this very much. The Jesuits are in it all. The Vatican's in it all. And, you know, not to poke and make fun at people of the Catholic faith, but this is one of the many divisions of the world, one of the many divisions in the body of Christ. You have states that are divided right now from states' rights. Look at Texas. Texas just got sued by the Biden Association because we decided to put up our own barrier. Now, I'm not exactly the greatest fan of Greg Abbott. Some of the things he's done in the past, I think he's weak, but I'm glad to see he's doing something. I can only ask so much from a politician, but I'm glad he's doing something. But to attack what we're doing on the border is to attack the people of Texas, because I've worked that border and I've seen the atrocity that is on that border. And so now we're having to tear down our border walls and we're selling it off. But yet they just erected a border wall in Maui that cost $3 million. Do you know how much we sold our border wall that we're tearing down for? $2 million. So the fix is in on this part. These politicians, Mike, hey, everybody who's listening, These politicians do not have your best interests at mind. They are like many others that I know. When the bombs start to fall, when the missiles are launched, they'll run to their bunkers, and your family's not included. They'll have people pre-designated as their security attaches. Maybe, if they're lucky, their families will meet them there. But they too will then have a problem. They too will have a problem unless they get only single people, which is, you're smart, that's what you would do. There is no easy or good way out of this. Civil war is inevitable in America. It's unavoidable at this rate. If our focus is on Christ, then we shouldn't really be so much worried about the politics. I don't really worry too much about what Caesar does. I worry about what the kingdom requires of me. What I ask for a lot of people is that if you wrap yourself up in the wardrobe of a politician and you care about what he votes for and who he talks to and how he performs, well, then you're wrapping yourself up in their sins as well. Be worried about yourself in your own household. That's kind of the way I am. But America has become solidified in two things. Either Donald Trump becomes the president, or we cannot allow Donald Trump to become the president. So we have then what I call a narrative that's attached to an event. The narrative is Donald Trump can't become the president, or we are going to lose our minds if Donald Trump doesn't become the president. So what's the event? The event is they arrest Trump. He can't become the president. Or the event is Trump becomes the president, and one or two of the groups, either the MAGA followers or the left, starts the next fight. We thought in Portland we were going to see the beginning of civil war because we were seeing groups square off against each other with guns, and we were right there in the middle of it. Trust me, we sat there and watched two different political groups. One was blatantly satanic and communistic, and the other one was absolutely righteous in their indignation and their anger, led by pride, and they believed more in the strength of their arms than in their faith in Christ. That's what I saw. That's how I took it. The reason why I say that is because if one shot from the right to the left, one shot, and you know damn well that these people would take full advantage of everything that you did, you will vilify yourselves. Obama and Clinton have been saying that the right are terrorists. What was it? White people are bad. Christians are bad. Returning veterans from foreign wars are bad. People who believe in the Second Amendment are bad. People who want to disassociate themselves from the federal government is bad. If you say something bad about the president, well, then you're going to be on a domestic violent extremist organization. If you belong to a militia, well, you're already going to be a terrorist in their eyes, which, by the way, if you belong to a militia, please get out of it. Every militia across America is compromised, period. Compromised. This is where we're at right now, just in America. And we haven't included a few things, Mike. We're only talking about the animosity. We're not talking about what are some of these other events. Some of these other events are these. Banking system goes down. You'll cause a panic. Next lockdowns start. You'll cause a mass panic and probably riots. When you see the grid start to go down, it won't be from the East Coast to West Coast. We used to think that back when I used to attend some of these things that the Nuclear EMP Commission would talk about. The biggest threat was EMP because that was the biggest threat. Now cyber warfare is so advanced that just a few years ago, China took over 2 of our SATCOM satellites. That's our satellite communication, GPS communication, stuff for our military. They were able to fully take control and command control of a satellite. Congress is now exposing that there are multiple transformers that have built-in backdoors by the Chinese, and most likely it's a Windows program by the Chinese. They cannot close the loophole of the door for the connection for China to be in it. So that means at any moment in time, China could send a bunch of DDoS attacks, as direct denial of service attacks, or a Trojan horse, and they could shut down any of those large transformers. And when that happens, you have what we call a cascading event. So large transformer gets shut down, blows lines to sub transformer, and then sub transformer goes out to the utility companies disperse that power to your home. If there's just one hiccup, it can all go kaput in a matter of minutes. And that's just from cyber warfare, which is now the growing #1 threat to America's cyber warfare. Out in Glen Rose, Texas, we have a nuclear power plant. I think it was 2016. North Korea, Iran, and China and Russia, I believe this was 2016, maybe it was 2015, had tried to use direct denial of service attacks on that one nuclear power plant approximately 1 million times in 1 year. And that's just one plant. There's plenty of them out there. So we got lockdowns, grid down. Then you have natural events. One good earthquake on the Pacific that will then slam down from the northern part of the Pacific down into the San Andreas fault line, and then carries all the way across America. I've already talked with representatives from the USGS about this when I was still in the government. They walked me through the map of how it could happen. Freaked me out, actually. Just one good size 8 or 9. And that sliding event from the Cascadia subduction fault zone would then trigger massive earthquakes all the way across to Madrid, which hits in my area of Texas and Oklahoma. It goes all the way up the Appalachians to New York now. It will go right into the Devil's whatever, where there's a nuclear reactor that's at the San Andreas fault line. It carries right across the Three Sisters nuclear reactor, which is the biggest nuclear energy reactor in America, the biggest nuclear energy power plant in America. That's in Arizona. It goes right across it. Could you imagine multiple eruptions from those? Man, that would suck. So that's another event. What we see is a smorgasbord of events that they could either choose from or that could happen. They have space-based weapons, obviously, that they can use. You have HARP, which is already admitted with Air Force owning the weather 2025, can trigger through the acoustics earthquakes. It can generate earthquakes. I ask myself a lot, what would be the need to cause such massive panic? Because if you're this evil elitist group, you're living here in America, or you want to live here in America, you're going to be a part of all this madness too. You can't live underground forever. You have to eventually come up. And look, I know there'll be people who say that there's entire cities underneath the ground. I won't dispute that. It is in DC. It probably also is in New Mexico and parts of Utah and parts of Nevada. The Denver airport, that's 7 stories down. I know one of the security managers for there. That is where we would co-locate the next White House. So there are contingencies, obviously, but they have to deal with the human element. People eventually won't be copacetic with these events unless they were in it from the very beginning. And, you know, you have books like The Black Awakening that I've been doing audio recordings of on my podcast on the American Vindicta Show. And one of the things that Russ Dizdar lays out is how you've had this potential black awakening for people that are of the satanic order for decades now. And we know how possession can work, and we know how sorcery can work. As a Christian, you better believe in it. It is real. All these things just add in another layer of factors that we have to deal with. I think with just what we've touched on, and I'm sporadically trying to remember just what we've touched on, there's too much for you to be able to deal with. And I think that's going to be something hard for the American people to deal with, is we think we can fight every fight. We think that we can win our country back. You know, we'll get a 1,000,000-man army and we'll go to DC and we'll arrest all the corrupt politicians. Good luck. You'll be met by a 3,000,000-man army. And not one of you can take on a tank, and not one of you can take on a drone. This is not 1776 anymore. Though that spirit may live with us, the technology is not. This is not the Civil War from the 1860s. We're not out there with flint rifles and repeating rifles doing mass company and battalion charges on each other. This next war, like what you've already been seeing when COVID struck and when the transgenderism struck and the George Floyd riots started up, this is a war that is on the spiritual level, that is on the social level. It's a war that's already being fought amongst homes, families, neighbors. I remember whenever Beto O'Rourke was running for governor and then senator in my area, and me and a bunch of partners of mine in law enforcement and friends of mine and family, we all said the same thing. Everywhere you saw a Beto sign, there is the enemy. There is a person who said that they support a guy who wants to take away your Second Amendment right and turn America into an authoritarian dictatorship. Your neighbor is on board with it. Your neighbor. Many people you go to church with voted that way. I don't think there's a way around it. I don't think there's a way out of it. I think what Christians need to do, which is what I'm focused on, is they need to get right with God. You need to get right here mentally. You need to be spiritually prepared, physically prepared, which doesn't mean apply for a loan and spend $10,000 at whoever's conference that's selling 5 years worth of sustained food and put yourself in debt. It doesn't mean go out and buy a bunker. We have no idea where the Lord could send any of us. We could all flee to the mountains. What I would say, do these few things, Mike, and then I'll give it back to you. Have at least 6 months worth of food. That's not going to cost you an arm and a leg if you do it the Dollar General way, the way I do it. I literally go to Dollar General and I buy what I need to sustain myself. There's also a reason why we have chickens and turkeys and ducks and geese. Oh, by the way, for any of you hunters out there, the food will go scarce within about a month or two. You won't have a squirrel in a tree. So don't even consider that route. Don't hamstring yourself on that. Once again, this isn't the 1800s. Buy food the smart way. You need to have more water than food. You got to have water to cook with, to clean with, water to boil with, and water to drink. Well, cook, clean, and drink, right? Cook, clean, and drink. A lot of people are going to die from smoke inhalation when the power goes down. They're still trying to cook inside their homes. That happens now. It'll happen again. So, already have an established place outside where you can cook. And I would tell people, start doing it this weekend. Make a ground fire, cook over your cast iron. We threw everything away, and the only thing we have now is cast iron. It sucks. It's a little heavy, but you know what? I could throw it over any fire, just like my grandfather did when we were out on the cattle ranch, and we can cook anytime. You know, teaching a man how to fish, he'll feed himself. I want you to understand this. If you ever watch Discovery Channel on the Serengeti, if you try to go to a fishing hole or a watering hole to go and gather fresh water, that's where the predators are, and that's where ambushes are too. So have a presence of mind wherever you go. You need to have this mindset. You may have to kill someone that you meet that day. For a lot of people, especially those of us in Christ, that's very hard to try and understand. That does not mean go around thinking you're, you know, the baddest guy on the block. That simply means be prepared to save yourself or your family or someone else should the need arise. Food, water, medicines. I get it. It's hard to get a year's worth of your medicines. Get what you can. You know, make sure your vehicle is in good working order. You cannot rely upon mechanics and the convenience stores when everything has gone downhill. So make sure your car is always running. Never let your car get under half a tank of gas. Fill it back up. Make sure you have a couple gallons of gas on the side. Your area of operations is as far as your gas can will take you, and as far as you're comfortable from leaving your family. So if you have to go and, you know, scavenge, or are you going to do it on foot? Or are you going to do it on your vehicle? I mean, there's a lot of things to take into consideration. Community preparedness is a huge thing for what's coming. What I'm trying to get people to understand is this: don't worry about trying to fight back and win America. If we're under judgment by God, which I most certainly think we are, my best advice for you is to stay out of God's way. He doesn't need your AR-15. He doesn't need your American flag that's made in China. Stay out of God's way. Worry about your house. Worry about your salvation. Dig your own well. Help your neighbors. Help the people who need help. And just hunker down and pray. That's my best advice. Mike?
Wow, you nailed it, Doug. You completely nailed it. It's crazy. And I think, you know, I really like what you talked about preparing. Don't plan on preparing to take on the invading army, so to speak. You're not going to be able to do it. Look, I'm almost 65. You know, it would take Doug or Jamie Walden like 10 seconds to disarm me, you know, at this point in my life. But I know where I can go to be safe. I know, Jeannie and I have, Jeannie especially has been preparing for years, you know. So listen to what Doug says. We're going to have him back on, and I'm going to twist his arm a bit here and talk with Jeannie about it. I think you'll probably see him out in Dallas for our conference in April in some capacity. And, you know, I hope you guys really listen to this. I will be sending the recording out, but what I want you to do is think about it and pray about it, and you know, understand what he said. You know, take heed. You know, you took an oath, Doug, when you joined the Marine Corps, and you swore to do what?
We swore by a blood oath to defend the Constitution and the people with our very last drops of blood. We did not swear allegiance to political parties. We did not swear allegiance to money, even though I was a contractor and I was a bought and paid for mercenary at one point in time. We were of a different mindset then. We are awakened to reality now. They tricked us into war. From 2006 to 2010, 44 men that I knew died. 44. So it is one of those things that you wake your eyes up to, seeing things that you never saw because you had this veil of patriotism over you. And then when you realize when your buddies are amputees, They're dealing with post-traumatic stress, suicide, alcoholism. I was a severe alcoholic coming out of the Marine Corps. You realized how little they couldn't care less about you. They threw you away. And for our next generation of war fighters, they're doing the same to them right now. And we're not in a war. We are in a war for the soul of America. But when the war starts here in America, things are going to get bad really quick. Really quick. I'm unapologetically violent when I need to be, because I understand the need for violence. That doesn't mean that I'm a mass murderer, doesn't mean I'm a psychopath, but it means that I'm not going to give you 1 second after I've told you drop a gun. When law's not coming, the rule of law is broke down, I need to make sure I go home. I have 5 little ones and a wife. I will go home. And one of the things that I've been trying to pound into people's heads is that if you're not of that mindset, that guy across from you is. And he'll either go home with your wife, or he'll go home with your head and the money in your pocket. I've been to the places, I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I've had friends of mine deployed to Africa, could tell you some of the most horrific stories you've never heard, and the media will never talk about. You know, this year in Nigeria, there's been over 3,000 Christians murdered just for being Christians, and it's increasing. And as someone who has only been a Christian for about 5 years, I see my faith tested, and I see the faith in many tested. And the commission that God gave me was to go after the young men. They're the next war fighters. They're the ones who will be in this next conflict. So I'm trying to be a spiritual guide to them in a role as an ad hoc chaplain. Chaplain is not the way the Catholics perceive it, because they screwed the entire thing up. Chaplain was a guy who controlled the men on the battlefield spiritually, morally. He was the one who stood there and said, hey, look, the enemy's down and defeated. Don't kick him when he's down, because we're not that. We're better than that. That was what the chaplain was supposed to have been on the field. So like what I said, when I started this whole thing, I'll tell all of you, where my heart lies is I'm back down in the trenches where the dead men are, trying to bring them back to life. That's what God gave me. So I'm trying to pass that on to others. Most likely it's going to be the youth that are going to be our problems, not the elderly. So we need to focus on them, because if not, look what's going on right now in America. We worry about our youth right now, Mike, in colleges who, you know, they have different pronouns, and today I'm a whale, tomorrow I'm a cat. Your kids that are in kindergarten right now are completely brainwashed to wholeheartedly accepting Satanism. Wholeheartedly. Right now, it's a trendy fad amongst the college kids. But for the kids that are in primary school right now, they will know nothing other. Hitler said, if you want me to take over a nation, give me its youth. That is being employed on us now. We need a protest of parents at schools. We need a protest of the men of cloth at the White House. But you don't see it. You don't see it because, for one thing, people are just too busy. Yeah, just too busy. The other part why you don't see it is because a lot of them are just too cowardly. They preach behind the pulpits about God and his righteous anger or the love of Jesus, but very rarely will you see them go walk on the streets and do anything about it. I'll take any one of you right now. Let's go to Beijing. I want to see you go out and evangelize in the middle of the streets of Beijing. My wife and I knew someone during 2020 when the COVID lockdowns were starting. Him and his sister were evangelists. Her brother was brutally beaten to death in the streets just for handing out Bibles. That will happen here. Those are the people who bought and paid for 50 governors of America, to include your president, to include General Milley, and most of everything that you buy right now and eat right now is made from China. Wholeheartedly against Christians. What do you think is coming here? What do you think is here right now? So, Mike, I get kind of upset when I talk about it because people don't take it seriously. But until you've seen what I've seen, until you've been where I've been, I take this at a different level. I am not some passive aggressive preacher on the streets. I don't care what you call me. You can call me a preacher, a pastor. I've been called all different types of things. I just tell people, just call me Doug. What I will tell you is if you didn't read the Bible today, you did yourself a disservice. If you didn't read to your kids, if you didn't pray with your kids, you did yourself and your family a disservice. So worry about that. Worry about that hedge of protection, that blood of Christ anointed on your family. And let God worry about the rest of this. We get too caught up in the machinations of Satan. This is what he wanted us to talk about. He wanted us to talk about politics. He wanted us to talk about civil war. He wanted us to talk about famine. He wanted us to talk about the WEF and transgenderism, because that's all he gives you to talk about. He don't want you to talk about Christ. He don't want you to talk about my Redeemer and the precious blood that he bought all of us for. He wants you, when you meet somebody, talk about a football team, talk about that UFC fight, talk about anything else. Just don't mention him, because that's the only thing he's afraid of. That's the only thing these Satanists are afraid of. And that's why when the infrastructure of the Antichrist is completed, it'll be us that they're after. And there'll be Christians who are going to be coming after you. And they're going to think that they're doing God a service, just like the Jews thought they did when they went after the Christians.
And hey, Katie, and we're going to have to wrap up for tonight. Katie, you have a question? You're muted.
Question, but I have more. Am I muted now?
No, you're good.
Okay, I just have a couple of comments really, and then one quick question. Thank you for tonight. This has just been, you've just been a walking encyclopedia, wealth of godly wisdom. Honestly, I think you've given us the best, well, me, and I'm sure many of us, the best advice about what do you need to do to prepare? And we hear stock this, get your guns loaded and everything else, but you've been so realistic and yet so gut encouraging. I thank you for that. The next thing I want to do is I thank you. I haven't listened to all of your podcasts, I'm a newer listener for you, but I'm so glad you started your podcast. Thank you so much for starting to read the Black Awakening. Ever since Russ died and even before, I've tried to look for a copy of that. That's nowhere to be found. And when I heard you were read, just really very thankful and grateful to you. And then along your podcast recently, I think I don't know, you had him on a few weeks ago or maybe recently, Zach King. I think he was the former Satanist, and that was a very interesting show. But I found it interesting that while he's not a Satanist, he's very Catholic. Lastly, I don't know if you're willing to give your email out. If not, that's okay. I'll just send one to Mike and have him forward it to you, because I actually have 3-4 different bits of information that I think you would be very interested in. So thank you so much for tonight.
Thank you, Katie. Doug, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Fascinating, great information. I can see now why Jamie and Dave Hodges encouraged me to reach out to you. You and I'll talk. I wanna have you on more often, just because you tell the truth in a way that makes sense, so I want you to keep doing what you're doing, brother. I mean, look at me. I've been at this now since 2005 and even before that. And, I did the stuff for the Marine Corps, all of that stuff. I'm getting tired. We need young guys like you. We need other young guys like you and Jamie Walden to fill our shoes. so to speak. So it's just been a blessing having you here tonight. Thank you so much. Why don't you give out your web address, how they can see your show, and how they can connect with you?
So the American Vindicta Show, www.americanvindictashow.com. If you type that in on Rumble or on YouTube, you can pull it up. I do almost everything on YouTube, mainly because, like I was telling you earlier, Mike, it's like whenever I try to load a video on YouTube, 2 hours or less, I'm up, it's gone, everything's fine. Well, except for that YouTube hates me and I'm completely demonetized. That's fine. God takes care of me. But Rumble, sometimes it can take me like a day or 2 or 3 just to load a video. I have no idea why. So if anything's pressing, I'll put it on Rumble, but for the most part, everything's on YouTube. Rumble's my backup. The Zachary King interview, former High Wizard of Satan, the Church of Satan, crazy interview. I asked people to, listen to that, and I get it. He's a Catholic, but he does believe in the redemption blood of Christ, and all that other religiosity he's got to deal with, not me. But I picked up from his experiences as a former investigator, because what I'm doing now is doing investigations in my own area of satanic occultism, and it's all over the place, So it helped me out, helped me understand the enemy's perspective, because that's what he was. He had been to Bohemian Grove 8 times. So if you want to hear something crazy, listen to our talk there about the Bohemian Grove. You won't find it on YouTube, because that's how my channel got taken down the first time. I got 3 strikes from that one interview, and I was off for like 90 days, and I petitioned and they let me back on. I just had to take that video down. And so it's on Rumble, American Vindicta Show on Rumble. The Doug and Dave Intel Report is on thecommonsenseshow.tv and thecommonsenseshow.com. Myself and Dave Hodges get into some awesome topics and debates sometimes about a lot of political stuff. If you want to hear how fancy I am politically, go to that one. I do a lot of my ministry work stuff. Once again, I deal with the sin. I deal with the problem of sin. If you want happiness, go see Joel Osteen. But I do some Bible study stuff on my channel. So if you like that, check that out. There's me and a former Navy SEAL, who was part of DevGru. We do something called the Storm Warnings, where we both get on and we just sharpen iron with each other. And that's a lot of fun. So yeah, gsradio.net is where the show is at, gsradio.net. And that is from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern time. We were right before Doug Hagman, and so we ended up taking Russ Dizdor's spot after he passed away. So I felt led to read Russ Dizdor's book and give voice to it, because I thought it was so powerful. We actually were sent a copy of his other book. Good luck finding any of these. Expelling the Darkness, and I'm going to put this one to audio narration, and I just did 2 chapters tonight for the Black Awakening. They're going to be on YouTube and on Rumble absolutely for free. I don't feel the need to charge anybody anything, though I very well could. If you want to donate to help the show stay open, because we literally live by donations, you can go to Give Send Go and just type in American Vindicta Show, or you can go to the website and you can see where it says donate. Don't try and use PayPal, because PayPal and Venmo have banned me. From the same time I got taken down with the Zachary King thing, PayPal and Venmo banned me. So link those 2 together. Someone didn't like what we were talking about. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. My name's Doug Thornton. Thank you very much for listening to me ramble. Mike, thanks for letting me come on and speak with your awesome audience. I can't wait to see you guys at the Hear the Watchmen conference in Dallas. It's going to be a lot of fun. Pray to God that we make it till that time.
Well, we'll have fun. You and I will have fun. I think anybody can tell you our directness is about the same. My wife has asked me to ask you to tell the listeners to spell, obviously they know America, but to spell your website so they.
Oh, so American, I'm a snob for Latin, sorry. Vindicta, Vindicta. Vindicta, for anyone who cares, American Vindicta Show. Vindicta talks about someone's own internal anger, a righteous anger that's built up, and it's the fire that keeps the engine hot, right? So that is what the show is called, America's Anger. And I was actually, that was not the original choice for this show. I had something what I thought was completely cool, and God changed it on me. So I went with what the Lord said, and he wanted me to speak about this. And there's a season and time for it. I could only assume I'm filled with vinegar and other things that some people would say, so maybe I'm the right guy for that title. But yeah, American Vindicta Show.
Awesome. So listen, I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. I want to thank those of you who donated to our capital campaign tonight and the ones that have previously. I need to reach our goal to keep going. And so if you can, the Lord leads you to, please get over there to either GoFundMe or just go to our website, click the donate button, help us reach that goal. And I know some of you have sent checks in, so I know we can make it. And we just deeply appreciate your help. So let's go to Katie. Katie, will you please pray us out tonight?
Yeah, sure. All right. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for bringing Doug to us tonight. I ask that you bless him, Jeannie and Mike, just abundantly, meeting all of their needs, but just blessing them beyond measure. And Lord, when I think of that verse, Nehemiah 8:10, I think where it says, the joy of the Lord is your, I've heard it two other ways, that the strength of the Lord is your strength and the blessing of the Lord is your strength. So Lord, just fulfill all of their blessings, and thank you for blessing us with Doug tonight. Lord, you are just such a blessing to us. I'm just so grateful for the message that we heard tonight, because Lord, it just draws us closer to you, because you really are our all in all. And so I thank you, Lord, for tonight. I just am very grateful for the message that we heard tonight, Lord. It draws us closer to you. And man, Wrecker, just 5 kids. I knew you had kids, but not that many. Lord, bless his wife, all of his kids, keep him safe, and just he's a mighty warrior of yours, Lord, and we are grateful for him. And we just ask him to just keep giving his message, because he trains us up into becoming warriors as well. So I just thank you, Jesus, for tonight. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Doug. Tomorrow night, guys, is Warfare Wednesday with Jeannie and Tracy. Thursday night, Neil Peterson will be our guest. Neil is the pastor of the church that Pastor Mike Spalding hosts his Go Therefore conference at. So he's got a real great message. And so we will see you all tomorrow night. Again, Doug, thank you so much for this evening. And we will see you all hopefully tomorrow night. God bless each and every one of you.